Hi, and welcome to another edition of AUHSD Future Talks. I'm your host, Superintendent Matsuda of the Anaheim Union High School District. And this show is all about jobs in the future and opportunities, as well as the challenges ahead for our 30,000 young people who attend Anaheim Union High School District schools. And we've been very fortunate to bring in so many of our partners from the world of work, from business, CEOs, nonprofits, our higher ed partners, and our partners in the community, especially as our community battles the COVID-19. And today's guest is someone really special, someone who oversees the health and welfare of Orange County's 3.5 million people. It's Dr. Clayton Chau. Just real briefly, Clayton, before I just want to share a little bit about who you are. You serve as the director of the Orange County Healthcare Agency, as well as the county health officers. Those are two dual roles, so important right now. And before that, you were the HCA's Behavioral Health Services leader, as well as the Chief Clinicals and Strategy Officer for Mind OC. Additionally, he's been employed by Providence Health System, the third largest health system in the country, as the Regional Executive Medical Director of the Institute of Mental Health and Wellness. So, Dr. Chau, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Superintendent Matsuda. It's an honor to have a conversation today, so thank you.
Yeah, so just to get a little bit more about you, I know that you're Vietnamese and Chinese Vietnamese, and you really have, I've asked this question to everybody in terms of what are your own personal drivers, and just share a little bit about who you are and, growing up and some of your challenges, and what are your personal drivers in life?
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm actually by bloodline Chinese Thai, but I was born and raised in Vietnam, so I consider myself very Vietnamese. And in fact, I tease my Vietnamese friend that I'm more Vietnamese than they are. My families came to the U.S. In the '80s, the same wave of the boat people that you heard about. For those of you, for our students, they probably don't know. They learn it through a history book. But for the parents, they're probably familiar with the boat people who came to the U.S. Through that route. And so personally, I feel a sense of debt to this community, to the U.S. And what I do has always been a way to pay back as well as pay it forward. You know this, and I've been very public about my own struggle with a recovery with depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I made it my professional career in the mental health and eventually on the health system, on how can we create a seamless health system that nobody will fall through the crack, including and especially those who are part of the vulnerable communities, right? So that's my passion. That has been my drive. Come to work every day and wake up in the morning knowing that I'm contributing to the wellness of our community in some way, play a part in contributing, building a healthier Orange County. So,
I know that your lived experience is one of trauma, not only personally, but you mentioned being a Vietnamese boat person. That's a kind of a generational trauma on a lot of Vietnamese, right? And I know that you are very familiar with how that has affected the community. And I'm sure you would, as a psychiatrist, we've had conversations about this in terms of how COVID-19 is affecting, especially young people, certainly older people, but young people, and kind of like the Vietnamese boat person experience, this is going to be irrespective of class and religion and gender, but this is going to have some long-lasting traumatic effects on these young people. in terms of their relationships, their ability to connect, and their own mental health. Can you share what some of your thoughts are about how this is going to affect these young people for maybe a long time?
Thank you for that observation, Superintendent Matsuda. I think you hit it on the nail. I mean, this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, literally has taken the whole world hostage for the last 10 months. If you think about it, right? I mean, this is a global issue, not just California, not just Orange County. The entire world, the human race, has been taken hostage because of this virus. We're only beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel via the vaccine. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the vaccine, but literally the world has been frozen. Our economy has paralyzed. We have lost life. And I know there are people out there, for some reason, still disconnected to the reality of this virus. I mean, the latest today, the information on the effect of COVID in this country, we now passed 20 million people infected that we know of. Remember, there are still people walking out there asymptomatic and don't know that they're infected, okay? And then we have lost over 350,000 lives literally within a 10-month period. That is more than the World War II and the Vietnam War combined in a span of 5 years for World War II and about 15 years for the Vietnam War. Think about that. Think about that. That is 2 decades of life loss that we manage or unmanaged to have it occur in 10 months. And the problem continue to be there because people did gather, did travel over Christmas break, did travel, did gather over the New Year celebration. We are expecting more people ended up in the hospital needing that level of care. More people will end up in the intensive care unit because of the severity of their condition. We will see more. We will see more death. And you know, our neighboring county, Southern California, everybody's struggling. I mean, LA County has been dealing with, on the average, is over 100 deaths a day this last 2 weeks or so, maybe a week and a half. And we don't see any relief in sight because we are expecting problems since this winter holiday that just ended over this last weekend. And so,
well, Dr. Chau, you know, I'm very interested in the ongoing effects of this in terms of mental health and the psychology of it. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the Columbine studies about they talk about a ripple effect in, you know, the Columbine tragedy and the shooting that happened, I don't know, probably over 2 decades ago, but it's having an effect now in that neighborhood and community generationally, because the stories, the horrific stories are told from person to person, from generation to generation, and there's still a lot of lingering mental health effects. And as you mentioned, with 350,000 dead Americans, we all probably have stories of people that we personally know or friends who have died in Orange County from this. And the ripple effect is generationally, neighbor to neighbor, people telling stories that are very real and horrific. What do you anticipate the lingering effects of this on our community mental health?
Well, I think that the next surge, I mean, we've been talking about the physical health surge, the hospitalization because of the physical health manifestation of COVID-19, right? But the next big surge is going to be the emotional effect of COVID-19, right? People will be, it's not the question of if, but it's when. People will be showing up with need for mental health services because they lost their loved one to COVID. They are dealing with job loss. They're dealing with financial loss. They're dealing with family who's struggling because of the economic lockdown, as we're talking about. Now, make no mistake, there are people who, because of the ability to prosper during pandemic, there will be a small group of folks, and you heard all over the world people are talking about certain sector prospering, right? Manufacturer that produce PPE, personal protective equipment, right? But the majority of the world and majority of people in Orange County have been affected financially, economically by this virus, and so we cannot forget those. So as you pointed out, yes, there have been 350,000 family affected because they have someone who died from these viruses, but there are other family who are affected because their business died. You know, they're struggling because of financial difficulty, right? So it's huge, and it will be generation to come. I think that 2020 will be going down to history as most traumatic year for the human race, and that effect happened everywhere, and we're going to have to deal with this. How do we build resiliency for the next generation to tackle this very issue?
Well, as I shared with you earlier, that many of us, the districts, are struggling with young people who have taken their lives, and we. In our district, we recently lost a ninth grader who took his life. And he was doing well with his grades, but it's all relative because he received his first C and D grade, and the family is struggling financially, and he took it upon himself. And so I am concerned as an educational leader that we do not stigmatize this generation as somehow being behind. That they're behind, their test scores are going down, so we got to like hurry up and catch them up, because I think that that's a double-edged sword, that it will stigmatize, and there's going to be that the bigger issue is how do we support the resilience of this young generation, because I know, as you know, trauma can build resilience, and our young people can come out of this much stronger, but we need to be very strategic in how we do that.
I think you're right. And I know people who talk about this have good intention, but I think what we need to do is strategically message it out in a way that it does not stigmatize our young student, right? And that is a hard job to do, and that require all of us, right? Educators, leaders, parents, to really come together and deliver the message in a way that are sympathetic but supportive, and build a sense of hope rather than build a gloomy picture that the youngster internalize it and blame it on themselves. Give a perfect example, and it doesn't have to take the pandemic for us to understand this. I mean, each one of us still remember, at least I still remember when we were young, when I first received my first B, it was almost like the end of the world, because so much expectation from our parents, our culture, our community, our society, that we internalize that. I can tell you, I remember I was depressed for a few days and thinking, oh my God, this is the end of the world, right? And I had teacher and friend who I was able to consult and talk to. Certainly not my parents, because not to their fault. In my family, my parents came and escaped communist Vietnam to come here because they wanted a better future for me and my siblings, right? And they sacrifice everything to make sure that we have a chance to education. And I am very sure that in their mind, it was devastating that I got my first B, because in their mind, what is it that they didn't do enough to support me to so that I can have an environment where I can get my A? You know what I mean? So we need to understand the different angle and the different perspective, but we need to take, say, pause and step back and say, how do we solve this for our youngster, that we know that we don't necessarily traumatize them more than they have already is. And you heard me talk about this, that it's not just our youngster, but I think the two population that I worry about the most throughout this pandemic is our youngster and then our elderly, because they are isolated. Our elderly senior have been isolated at home or in their long-term care facility just because they're most vulnerable to this virus. In Orange County, 75% of people who die are the age of 65 and older, right? So I worry about them. Yes, we protect them from the virus, but unfortunately we isolate them, that it causes emotional toll on them. My own mother, I have to check in with her all the time because we've been keeping her at home and not allowing her to go outside except for medical visit, right? Even then, we do it over Skype and FaceTime, and she's been at home since last Chinese New Year, because we heard of what's happening in Wuhan, and we expected that it's going to spread because we live in a global world. We don't live in isolation. So because my mom has a heart condition, so we kept her at home until now. And we know she feel bad and she feel isolated and lonely. We did everything we can to make sure that she still keep in touch via a technology with her sibling, with her grandchildren and what have you. But you can tell, I mean, she get depressed and what have you. And then the other group is our youngster, right? I mean, they isolated, and children need to be with their peers, and children need to be with their adults, right? And
so the only way that we're going to be able to bring kids back to school
yeah,
is this developing this herd immunity through the vaccine. And by the way, this coming year, as you know, is the year of the ox. So we're all going to have to be workers to continue to move forward, plow forward, plow ahead. So Dr. Chau, if you can, we're going to pivot now to the vaccine, because there's a lot of concern. I know that you've seen surveys. You yourself have been quoted with out in the, because, even our first line folks are concerned about it, right? Taking the vaccine. Police and fire, teachers, right? And eventually it's going to be the parents and students. And there is, so can you address like what some of those concerns are? Like I've heard some of them that are pretty wild, the 5G and the conspiracy and all that stuff, but there are some valid concerns as well. And then can you also talk about this concept of herd immunity?
Yes. So let me, and there's a lot. Thank you for that question. I want to address this first. Because the vaccine has been able to be available for people use so fast, folks mistaken for, oh, well, there has to be some skipping in getting this out in the market quickly, and therefore it's not safe. In terms of research, to be able to bring the vaccine to the public, there was no skipping there. The protocol was in place, just like any other medical product. All the pharmaceutical company has to do the same thing. They have to recruit enough subject and study and make sure there's safety and effectiveness before we roll this out, right? And so the normal timeline shrunk to less than 10 months because there was a lot of people all over the world who were willing to participate on the pilot study and as research subject, whereas your normal process of getting enough people who want to be test subject to test out a product took years because people weren't interested in participating in research. But because globally there was an effort, there was an understanding that we need to have enough people who volunteer to be studying this vaccine so we can roll it out. All pharmaceutical companies have been able to recruit people into their study very quickly. So nothing has been skipped. Let's make that very clear. The FDA is the strictest entity in the world who are allowing or not allowing certain product to be in the market. And so they approve, they authorize it. Let me just say that, right? And so there's safety study as long as the duration of the pandemic, right? We do know that it is effective. The two vaccines that was just the first two vaccines that have been authorized have been very effective, around 95% effectiveness. That is great news, right? And then the preliminary, the early side effects, we all study all that. They reported it, right? And we continue to monitor, right? Let me tell you this. This is the only hope for us to reopen our economy. Let's make it perfectly clear. If we don't have enough people in the community who take the vaccines to create herd immunity, and you've heard herd immunity meaning at least 60 to 75% people in the community who have been exposed and react to the virus and create an immunity in the system, we won't be able to reopen it, right? And some people ask, well, why wouldn't we allow people to get all infected all at the same time? Well, that's silly. Currently, we do know that with all the number that we see, only 12% of community are infected with the virus. And then with that 15% or 12%, whatever it is, the number of deaths is what it is now. Imagine if you want to achieve 6 times of that, the number of death will be 6 times of that death, right? That is unimaginable. You can't do that. And that's why we're rushing towards getting a vaccine. And we need people to get vaccinated in order for us to be able to reopen the economy. That's the end game.
So I know you guys are still working out the logistics, but we're obviously getting a lot more questions about how do you see it rolling out to parents and students. I know that the details are not finalized, but how because that's a big question, like the logistics of getting this out to parents and students. How do you see that happening?
So currently, because of the limited number of vaccines available worldwide, as well as the US and California, what we've done is we tier people out. Who are the most at-risk people? We need to vaccinate them first, and then go down the tier based on risk, right? So the first group of people that we're working with now to get them vaccinated are healthcare workers, because we have to have a healthy healthcare system in order to take care of folks. In California, particularly Southern California, I worry that if we don't vaccinate our healthcare worker fast enough, who's going to be there to take care of this next wave of folks who's getting sick, as I mentioned earlier, right? But even taking care of the high-risk healthcare worker, we have to tier them because we only have a finite number of vaccines available now, and we need to encourage those healthcare workers who are at the high risk to go and get the vaccine so that they can sustain the health system. It is about sustaining our health system, right? So the next phase will be people who probably have a lot more interaction with the public. And remember, we talked about there are people who are walking out there not symptomatic, so they don't know. They might be infected because they were exposed. They don't know. And if they are not careful in doing what we've been asking the community to do, is if you feel sick, stay home. If you're out, wear a mask, social distancing, all that stuff. So we want to make sure that we prevent our healthcare worker from getting sick and get out of commission and cannot function and cannot work to support the system. And then we'll go down to the elderly who are 65 and above, 75 and above, and then 65 and above, because they are the most vulnerable population, right? Because we talk about 75% of the folks in Orange County die 65-year-old. Yeah. Sorry.
Time for the teachers and then the students, because we're kind of messaging out that we're talking about spring or late spring for the teachers, and the students would probably be over the summer, meaning that to get herd immunity, we need to get a campaign going on getting our folks aware. Like you said, this is a safe remedy, and if we're serious about opening up with some sort of normalcy, with herd immunity by the fall, we need 75% of our students.
About community. Yes.
Of the community. Yes, absolutely.
So let me make it very clear. Very effective vaccine so far that we know. Safe as long as we know it. Remember, this vaccine is new. Projecting 3-6 years from now, the safety profile, we will learn that together, right? But at least preliminary data shows that for now it is safe, because if it's not safe, the FDA would not authorize it, right? But for now, it is very effective to get us there, to get out of this lockdown, this economic rut that we've been in. So it's really important.
Dr. Chau, do you see, in terms of the logistics of rolling this out, how does the county see that happening? Would that happen at schools or at pharmacies? How do you think that would best be rolled out?
So for Orange County, we started what we call Operation Independence, with the target date of July 4th. We want to achieve general herd immunity so we can reopen our economy by July 4th. That is our goal, okay? So in order to achieve that, we have to walk backward and say, how do we make sure that people have access to the vaccine once it's their turn to receive the vaccine, right? And so we are doing multi-pronged approach to this. We are setting up a super pods or super site so the community can go and get vaccine. We're going to be working with the school district and hopefully Anaheim Union High School District to create pods for the educator, for the family that trusts the educator more than the doctor and the medical profession. We want to make sure that barrier to receive the vaccine is not there. We are even thinking about mobile team that will go into neighborhood and give the vaccine to neighborhood where we sense that the infection is high, yet the vaccine uptake is low. So is access to getting the vaccine as well as education and messaging out. So we're going to be working very closely with your team, Superintendent Matsuda, on how do we message, because you are the trusted entity in the community with parents that have children. You are the yeah. So we need
to piece for you, and we're so happy that you are overseeing a lot of this, especially knowing how to get the message culturally and linguistically to our community. I know that you've been a strong advocate for the contact tracers that were trained in languages, and you have a whole history of working with communities. So it's very gratifying to hear that we're all part of your plan in terms of being inclusive. So I know that we're just about out of time, and we have a large audience that listens to this, and it is, after all, about careers and jobs. And I think COVID has opened up the eyes of a lot of us in terms of the importance of community health. In the last minute or two, can you speak directly to the young people how this might give opportunities? I mean, obviously it's the biggest challenge ever in a generation, but there's going to be opportunities ahead for our young people.
Oh, absolutely. I think so too. And my message to our students is that while we are in the pandemic, and the pandemic pushed a lot of things up front, but the thing that the pandemic has pushed up front is this idea of equity, right? Is really important. When you're in crisis, people who are vulnerable, who have historically been disenfranchised or pushed to the edge of the community, ended up being the population that get affected the most. Okay, and so this is an opportunity for you to learn, and whatever career you want to take, whether it be in the medical field or engineering or lawyer or even in the food industry or what have you, I would encourage you to take this opportunity to see that how you as a student, as a citizen, affect what you do, what you say, and how you learn affect the community that you live, the neighborhood and community that you are a part of. And so establish a worldview in how you're going to approach your career and how you're going to approach being part of your neighborhood and the community. This is exciting. Even if you're an engineer, you need to know how all the other parts fit together in affecting the community, right? And so we are moving towards creating a system, because what happened is, it's not particular to Orange County, this is happening in California and all of our country, is that we are so used to existing in silos, and we do very well in silos. But the problem is, when you have crisis, working in silos no longer works, and we get in trouble, right? And so it's great that you have Superintendent Matsuda, who think more from a community perspective, the ecosystem where the educational system is a part of, and that is really important. So you cannot just exist alone. You really need to collaborate and work together in an ecosystem.
Yes, I love that, because what you're talking about is moving from dependence to independence to interdependence, right? And this is a lesson for all of us about interdependency. You know, on behalf of our 30,000 students and our 2,500 employees and all of our parents out there, we are so grateful to you, Dr. Chau, for your leadership during this pivotal, critical time for Orange County and for the Anaheim Union High School District community. Thank you so much for your time, and wishing you, you know, a strong year of the ox moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the privilege to serve our community alongside with you. So thank you.